Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of RegAlytics, with your update on this week's 27,319 regulatory alerts. And welcome to the 299th episode of the Regulatory Roundup. The regulator of the week is Arkansas, and the topic of the week is pharmacy benefit managers. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's say you're sick and the doctor prescribes antibiotics. Someone invented those antibiotics. Let's call that person Allison. Allison is a scientist. She has an amazing breakthrough and she creates this drug. Let's call it Beetlejuice. She then patents the drug as the owner of the drug. And then let's say she sells the Beetlejuice to Cameron to manufacture it and sell it. And I am doing this with A, B, C names in letters so that you can follow along. So Cameron is the owner of Beetlejuice. But Cameron wants to make a lot of Beetlejuice, so he builds a factory that makes it, and he wants to get it out there for sale. Cameron is a drug manufacturer. Here's where your doctor comes in. And your doctor's name is Doctor with a capital D, because that is a different entity from Ellen. Ellen is a healthcare provider. She has a company that employs doctors. She manages all the payment and billing and everything about how the doctor is billed. Are you with me? So Allison is the scientist. She creates Beetlejuice, which is sold to Cameron, who's trying to sell it. And then Ellen has a company where doctors who help patients need Beetlejuice. Seems simple, but there's more. Because Frankie is a pharmacist. And Frankie is the guy that you get the drugs from. Frankie can only distribute the drugs if he has a note from the doctor about how much to distribute to the patients. And then finally, there's Grace and Holly. Grace is your employer. Holly is a health insurance provider. Grace and Holly have made a deal. Grace, your employer, pays Holly some money to make sure that you have insurance. You, of course, have to pay for your insurance as well. So you and Grace both pay Holly a little bit every month. And in return, Holly promises that if something goes bad, she's got your back. So you need Beetlejuice. You know this because your doctor told you you need it. So you go to Frankie to get it. And the big question now is who pays for this? Well, Holly said she's got your back. So Holly's paying for it. But let's go back to Cameron, who's the drug manufacturer of Beetlejuice. Who does Cameron sell his drugs to? He doesn't sell it to you. He doesn't sell it to the doctors. He could sell it to Frankie the pharmacist, but he also doesn't really sell it to Grace, your boss. So no, Cameron sells these drugs to a thing created in the 1960s called the Pharmacy Benefit Manager. And let's call him Isaac, okay? In the 1960s, Isaac went to your boss, Grace, and said, hey, you run a company that focuses on herding cats, and you promise this insurance, but really you don't know anything about what drugs should be covered or what their prices are or any of that stuff. Let me take care of it. Meanwhile, Isaac went to Holly, the insurer, and said, hey, man, you don't have time to sort out which drugs should cost what or what plan should get a certain percentage paid. Why don't you just let me do that? Then Isaac went to Cameron and said, hey, man, you don't want to deal with all these different pharmacies and insurance companies and employers. Why don't you just let me buy all of your Beetlejuice and I will deal with the negotiations. And then finally, Isaac goes to Frank, the pharmacist, and says, hey, man, you don't want to deal with insurance and billing of whatever the drug amount is. Just take the orders that the patients and match them with the stock of drug, and I'll deal with all the insurance claims, right? So this was a no-brainer for everyone at all levels at the time because it was really complicated. And what people didn't realize, however, was that Isaac was getting Cameron to drop his price on Beetlejuice. And then in addition to service fees to all these other people that they were paying him, he priced the drug just a little bit higher than what Cameron priced it at. And he pocketed the change. There was no law about this, so why not? I mean, if you look at it, Grace, Holly, and Frankie are happy because Isaac has saved them so much headache and trouble. Plus, Cameron was pumped. He could sell the entire stock and not have to worry. What do they care, right? Then Isaac had a great idea. Why not just buy Frankie? So these PBMs went and started buying pharmacies, and by the 1990s and early 2000s, PBMs had become powerful players in the healthcare system, and today, just 3 companies, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum Rx, control about 80% of the market. Now we get to Arkansas. So in 2020, Arkansas passed a law requiring PBMs to reimburse pharmacies at or above the pharmacy's cost, right? And the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, which represented all the PBMs, challenged the law, arguing that the state couldn't pass a law like that because it was preempted by the federal law called ERISA, which I'm not going to get into. Anyway, the Supreme Court ruled 8-0 that ERISA did not preempt Arkansas's law. In other words, states can regulate PBMs. And this opened the door for state-level rules to go nuts, especially around reimbursement practices and transparency. Since then, many states have passed or strengthened laws to rein in PBM practices that they see as harmful to pharmacies and patients. And to put it in perspective, there were over 1,400 alerts related to PBMs since 2020 and 94 passed bills. All the 50 states have passed something. And now we have the one big, beautiful bill that is not yet passed. But this is the one where Microsoft Copilot last week told me that it had nothing to do with PBMs. But then I looked at the bill itself, and there is a whole section on PBMs. And now the summary from Copilot goes to a KPMG article that simply directs the reader to pull the full text of the reg. So anyway, I digress. The one big beautiful bill is mostly focused on transparency in pricing. It defines what a PBM is because there's different flavors and different types of aggregators out there. And also it does limit the PBMs from steering patients to the pharmacies that they own. Okay. So why is Arkansas coming up today as the regulator of the week? Well, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is the current governor of Arkansas, published an op-ed in the New York Times yesterday sharing her enthusiasm for HB 150, which Arkansas passed in April of this year. In that new law, this is a second law Arkansas has passed, they've taken the bold step of banning pharmacy benefit managers from even owning pharmacies in the state starting in January 1st of 2026. So what I find amazing is that in her op-ed, there is no mention of the one big beautiful bill. And it's possible she's had some influence in getting those protections put in. But one thing I question is if a federal bill on the rules for pharmacy managers will preempt what the states can or cannot do, which would really put a damper on Governor Huckabee's plans. And I already mentioned the one big beautiful bill, if it's passed, is putting a 10-year moratorium on AI regulation or enforcement at a state level, which Marjorie Taylor Greene has already expressed frustration that she voted for the bill not knowing that the AI section was in it. And she even said that had she known, she wouldn't have voted for it. So I'm worried that our leadership doesn't have the regulatory transparency they need to make good decisions on our behalf. And I wish they'd all just buy RegAlytics. So do me a favor. Why not write your congressperson or representative and suggest if they don't want to fund the Congressional Research Service anymore, maybe they just buy a subscription to RegAlytics so they know what's going on outside their small internal orbit. And that's it this week for RegAlytics. We have the global supply chain of the world's regulatory alerts in one very easy to use place. If you need a solution for anything related to regulation, give us a call.